All right, welcome back. Keegan Kogan in A10, and we are getting into World War II. We'll get into separate lessons. We'll get into how it begins in Europe and then how it begins in the Pacific. But I guess the best way to start is to look at how some of these evil leaders, authoritarian leaders, wind up coming into power in Europe and the Pacific during the 30s that led to this huge disaster that we know as World War II.
Yeah, because, history doesn't happen in a bubble. The context of everything from the end of World War I to the Treaty of Versailles to the Roaring 20s in America weren't so roaring for Europe,
right,
into the Great Depression, and how they lead to these dictatorial, authoritative, totalitarian rulers. And in fact, I don't want to say we were going that path, but FDR was once asked about the New Deal failing and who he thought the next president would be if the New Deal failed. And he said, my chap, if this fails, I'll be the last president.
Right.
Because there was a socialist, fascist movement even here in America.
And there were business leaders who did not approve of them.
Winston Churchill even suspends Britain's democracy in times of war. I have nothing to offer you but blood, sweat, toils, and tears, or something like that.
So you did see certain countries go with authoritarian dictatorship types of rules, and then other countries flirted with different leadership ones. This is pretty interesting. If you go to Google,
word usage,
it's defined, and you type in define the particular word. I think it's called an engram pops up, and it shows the word usage over time in mass media and things in print. And when we're looking at authoritarian, that word usage starts to go up right around the time period that we're covering right now. But when we're getting into what authoritarian is, favoring or enforcing strict obedience to authority, especially that of government, at the expense of personal freedom.
The example I love to give is certain teachers in the hallways.
Your class versus my class.
Yes, exactly.
Even
romper
leadership
room,
styles.
North Korea.
Yeah, leadership styles. He allows you to smile. I don't. You don't have to raise your hand in his class. You have to raise. Just look. And of course, we've encountered them growing up. Mm-hmm. You have certain teachers that are pretty much chill, and then you have the other ones that rule with an iron fist. And that can go with coaching that you've probably seen in professional sports. When it comes to getting into World War II, the question always comes up, well, how did it begin? And you can kind of trace its early problems right back here.
Is there even a World War I and a World War II? Or was there really just a 20-year halftime?
Halftime, right.
It's, some of the countries changed, but it's really just a 20-year halftime.
And when we look at some of the failures of World War I, the United States comes up with the Treaty of Versailles. We went into it. Not the Treaty of Versailles, the League of Nations, thanks, and you probably saw us cover that cartoon. I forget it's gone. But anyway, when it came to the United States comes up with the League of Nations, we don't join the League of Nations. Could this be why there was a World War II? You don't have your major player involved. But, some of the things that you might consider failures that were included in the Treaty of Versailles, Germany's blamed for it, the War Guilt Clause, Germany has to pay all these reparations. This is going to leave a country that's pretty much really upset. They
embarrassed,
exactly.
Kicked while they're down.
Can't rebuild your military. You have to give up certain things like Alsace.
They're not enjoying the Roaring 20s, if you would, because anything that they have, they're having to pay to England, to France, and the United States. So when the stock market does crash in the United States in 1929, it's not just the United States that are in the depression.
Right.
Germany's already depressed, and now it just compounds that problem.
So when we're
dropping a pebble into a quiet lake, the ripple effect.
At that point, Germany's like, welcome to the party, pal. Yeah. Welcome to the party. When we look at it, again, those reparations that we mentioned, that Germany had to pay the Allies, and again, when we're looking at how World War I ends, Germany had to accept the terms that were laid out for them by the Allied powers. Again, you see all these countries involved. Who's missing? Germany. And these are things we went over in the last one. So when we're getting into these authoritarian type of leaders, there's a lot that could be said, and there's separate videos that you can get into with these guys, and even History Channel has done documentaries on these guys.
You could spend a month just talking about this guy.
Exactly.
So, Hitler's big rise to power really was the fact of his promise that he was going to rebuild Germany, that he would, don't want to sound, but like he was going to make Germany great again.
Yep.
And, oh, you don't have a job? Oh, you're hungry? Oh, you're poor? Well, I've got the perfect solution to that. That guy over there took your job. He's the reason you're hungry. He's, whoever it was. And that person just happened to be Jewish.
Yep.
He completely scapegoats the Jewish people of Germany and turns successfully the entire country against them in a slow but systematic approach that will eventually culminate in the Holocaust.
And when we're looking at certain instances, you bring up they had their own economic problems. We look at FDR. He didn't end the Depression. Comes in, he's very active, along with his wife. What he did give people was hope.
Yep.
You can kind of say that with Hitler as well. Of course, his methods were much different, but he did give them hope. He did give them somebody to blame.
Pride.
Pride
definitely being
pride.
German. I mean, we're talking about the extreme nationalism.
Right.
To a point where like Germany could do no wrong. If you weren't German, you were.
So some of the things, yeah, exactly.
The Aryan race, the superior race of all people, blonde hair, blue-eyed, black hair, brown-eyed.
Right, yeah. So when we look at these authoritarian leaders that we're going to cover today, some of the similarities you're going to see between all of them. Again, ruling with an iron fist. Germany obviously didn't like the Treaty of Versailles. Other things, they felt that they were superior to other people. These are some similarities you're going to see.
No personal freedoms.
Right.
Control of the media. Control of schools.
Yep. That's what you're going to see, the similarities that they all have here, which is, by the way, a quiz or test question. All right, scapegoat. I'm sure if we didn't say that just a couple moments ago when we were talking about the Jews, that's what he did with the Jews. They blamed them for all their problems, which is going to bring us now to this guy.
Go back. And what I like to point out, although he does end democratic rule in Germany, he was democratically elected.
Right.
People don't realize that. He didn't seize power. The Nazi Party in Germany slowly builds power, and once the Depression hit, it was like they were the perfect answer to their problems, and he's democratically elected, unlike this guy.
Oh gosh, the thing with dictatorships is that what I tell students is that when you have one dictator go to the other, when you're a dictator, you don't retire and go play golf, and you're murdered. That's the transfer of power in most cases. That's certainly something you'll see throughout this unit that happened with Mussolini. When you're a dictator, you don't just
all right, see you later.
Off.
Yep.
Have a Secret Service agent around.
And with Stalin, it's not recognized really by many people, but he was responsible for many million more deaths.
The death toll was probably higher with him
than Adolf Hitler, partially because Hitler's regime ends with his death in 1945, where Stalin is alive and ruling the Soviet Union for a much longer period of time. And for those of you who are like Call of Duty fans, the Gulag.
Oh, this is okay.
It's part of the game.
I'm not up to it yet.
Part of the game.
So when we're talking about eliminating freedoms, the Soviet Union definitely had a totalitarian state where you had a single party controls the government in every aspect of people's lives. Mr. Kogan was bringing up a couple moments ago, you don't have any personal freedoms. This is certainly something you're going to see in the Soviet Union. When you're looking at political parties in these countries, where you have options, debate, deliberating, it's not going to take place in these countries. Again, ordered peasants to hand over land. Citizens must obey the government without question. This does sound like my classroom. If you're criticizing the government, you're severely punished. And again, something similar didn't agree with the Treaty of Versailles that you're starting to see. And then, it's always interesting too, when you go and Google these, and this is not by design, they're all in military uniforms for the most part, which will bring us to Italy.
El Duce.
Yep. When you talk about being in classrooms, I know the textbooks like to make a reference to say that they always made children say that Mussolini was always right. He was also, angry over the Treaty of Versailles. Again, outlawing all political parties, no deliberating, no debate, no questioning the government.
Blind loyalty to the state,
yes.
Blind loyalty to your government.
Rooted in militarism, nationalism. Some of the same words that we saw as causes for World War I, you're seeing repeated when it comes to moving into World War II.
And definitely one of my favorite ends of his
Oh gosh, it's brutal.
His life.
Oh,
It's the way the Italian
brutal.
people take their revenge on him.
Him and his wife.
Yeah,
I mean, it's brutal. His face, not to get
We'll
gruesome,
show you.
you can't even recognize
Yep.
it. Oh, probably really horrible. Embarks on a program of military aggression. This was when they start when Italy gets involved in World War II. They go and invade Ethiopia. You want to talk about a mismatch? You know, they were much more industrious. They had tanks. They had rifles with semi-automatic firepower, and you know, Ethiopian military, if that's what you want to call them. You know, they didn't have this industrial might.
They were
with their
still
military.
using like single shot
I was just going to
rifles.
say, yes.
You know, like the bolt action rifles.
Yep. Again, government's controlling all the schools. Whoop. Oh, that was with Germany. Don't worry about it. All right, so that's going to bring us to Japan, who has an emperor, who put a lot of military rulers.
Yeah,
Pretty much in rule.
Hirohito really wasn't in charge. Although he was the emperor and his decision was final, he kind of passed the buck to his military rulers who will lead Japan. And very similar to Germany, the Japanese believed that they were superior.
Yep.
You know, in racial characteristics. Funny, you know, because it's almost like we have to go all the way back to the Treaty of Kanagawa.
Yep.
Here. You know, the rise of
They were an isolation
Japanese
country. Yep.
industrial might, because we, through our gunboat diplomacy, helped turn them in to the world power that they are in the 1930s.
Because they looked at us and they're like, wow, we're behind.
Yep.
We need to catch up.
Yep.
You mentioned the fact that, you know, again, when we look at his role, where you're looking at his military leaders had a lot of power and control, it didn't stop him from wearing a military uniform.
Never served a day in uniform in
Probably
his life.
not. Never, yeah, those medals, whatever, you know. Economy suffered during the Depression, felt that they were superior to others. And, you know, when you're talking about war kicking off in Japan, in the Pacific, that started when they invaded China. They wanted to expand in the Pacific and control the entire Pacific.
Mostly in need of natural resources.
Yep.
Japan is an island, mountainous nation, lacks natural resources. Their neighboring China, full of them.
Perfect. Anything else we need to get to?
Nope.
I think we've covered it all. I mean, you know, those are your similarities that they most of them had. Angry over the Treaty of Versailles. They felt they were superior to other people.
Believed in militarism, controlling people's lives, no personal freedoms, yada, yada, yada.
All right, great. Thanks for watching.